Well, this chapter of 2 Thessalonians, I think, has to be one of the most fascinating chapters in the whole Bible. Because it spells out in great detail the efforts of a single person to set himself up as God, the man of lawlessness. Some Bible translations refer to him as the man of rebellion, the man of sin, the son of perdition, the one who is destined for destruction. Now, in our weekly Bible discussion groups, and I mean every single one of them, this was the first question to be raised. You sit down, say, so, did you read 1 and 2 Thessalonians? What did you think? And everyone was like, what in the world is Paul talking about? Who is the man of lawlessness? Indeed, who isn't? Well, let's get our bearings here again in verse 4. He, the man of lawlessness, will exalt himself. He will defy every god there is and tear down every other object of adoration and worship. He will go in and sit as God in the temple of God, claiming that he himself is God. Now in this verse, Paul tells us 4 very plain things about this person. No, I've got to go back. Four very plain things about this person. Number 1, he will exalt himself. He is proud, arrogant, boastful. No, just keep it on that slide. I'll tell you when to turn it. Okay. Thanks. He is proud, arrogant, boastful. Number 2, he will defy every god there is and tear down every other object of worship and adoration. He gets rid of anything or anyone else that might compete with his position. Number 3, he will go in and sit as God in the temple of God. Think of the arrogance of that particular action if you're not God. He will attempt to usurp God's own position in his own temple. And number 4, of course, if you're going to do number 3, you might as well do number 4. He will claim to be God. He not only exalts himself, he not only puts himself on the same plane as God, but he seeks to tear God down as an object of worship and goes to take over his place in the temple, to reign as God, claiming that he, in fact, is God. Okay, now you can go to the blank screen. That's astonishing, isn't it? Obviously, this person Paul is writing about isn't God. So it's got to be one of God's own creatures. And he's attempting to pull God down off of his throne in the temple so he can sit there himself. That's crazy. No wonder Paul calls him the man of lawlessness, rebellion, evil. So we could ask, is this true? Is this going to happen? Well, isn't it interesting that 40 years after Paul wrote this letter to the Thessalonians, the Apostle John saw something nearly identical in the vision he was given while he was on the Isle of Patmos. That's why we had to read Revelation 13 this morning. You know, Tara came in this morning before the service, and she said, this sounds like it's out of a sci-fi novel. I know. I wonder if John thought he was going crazy when he saw these things. But it was nearly identical to what Paul wrote to the Thessalonians, and that's why we had to read it this morning. I wanted you to see how the Spirit has inspired all of these different Bible writers with the same message, to warn us of what's coming, so we won't be caught off guard. Revelation 13. Then I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. And John describes its head and horns and its appearance. And the dragon gave the beast his own power and throne and great authority. Now, reach back into your memory all the way back to Easter and see if you can recall. Who's the dragon? Do you remember? Anyone? Satan! That dragon, that ancient serpent of old, John calls him. The devil, or Satan. John says that he, Satan, gives his own power to this beast that has come up out of the sea. Now, verse 3. I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery. But the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. They worshipped the dragon for giving the beast such power. And they also worshipped the beast. Who is as great as the beast? They exclaimed. Who is able to fight against him? What's going on here? John is describing a time on this earth when a man, or perhaps an agency, arises with the power of Satan. And what does the world do? They worship both the man, or the agency, and Satan. And why? Well, in part because they're amazed by this miracle. Now let's jump back again to 2 Thessalonians 2. After Paul warns that the man of lawlessness is coming, he goes on to say this. This man of sin will come as Satan's tool, full of satanic power, and will trick everyone with strange demonstrations, and will do great miracles. He will completely fool those who are wicked because they have said no to the truth. They have refused to believe it and love it and let it save them. And so they will worship the beast. That's what this whole thing is about. Worship. Who are you going to worship? Are you going to worship God? Or are you going to worship the beast? Are you going to exalt yourself? Or are you going to humble yourself? Are you going to allow God to sit in his temple as God? Or are you going to tear him off the throne so you can sit there instead? Now, are you really wondering if this can actually be about worship? I mean, really? Is that all it's about? Well, think back to the Garden of Eden with me. When Eve was there at the tree talking to that serpent of old, what did the serpent say would be the result of eating the fruit? Anyone remember? Oh, all of you remember, and I couldn't understand anything you said. But I know you were right, that she and Adam would also become gods. God is keeping you from this fruit because he knows that when you eat it, your eyes are going to be opened and you are going to be one God like him, just like him. The serpent told Eve that she and Adam could also become gods. And even though Eve was created perfect, even though she had absolutely everything she could ever want or need to be satisfied and fulfilled with her life, she was deceived into reaching out her hand and grasping at more. She was deceived into believing there was something more. She was deceived into believing she could be her own God. And this has always been Satan's objective. Since the beginning of his descent into sin, he exalted himself, seeking to usurp God's rightful place as creator. Here's what the Lord said about him through the prophet Isaiah. Listen to this. How you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. to accomplish when he encountered Jesus in the wilderness during the temptations. Do you remember? He took Jesus to the top of a high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and said, I will give them all to you if what? If you worship me. Satan, this beautiful creature who was once a brilliant angel, brazenly asked his own creator to get down on his knees and worship him. Ultimately, that's what Satan wants. That's where this is all headed. Satan wants to be acknowledged and worshipped as God, to be sovereign, to reign supreme. That's the only thing he wants. And it's the one thing he can't have. Satan can never be worshipped or adored as creator. And it's not because God is jealous for his own position or power hungry or somehow fearful of competition. It's because no person can escape the reality of their nature. No person can escape the reality of their nature. And in a universe where there is a creator, there are only two available natures: created and uncreated. Grasp that with me this morning. In a universe where there is a creator, there are only two available natures. You are either a created being or you are an uncreated being. God is uncreated. He didn't come from anywhere. He's just always been here from eternity past. And he will always be here through eternity future. He didn't have a beginning, and he will not have an ending. He is the beginning. He is the end. He just is by his very nature. That's why one of his most prominent names in Scripture is I am. It's in his nature to exist. You find that hard to wrap your mind around? I do. And there's a good reason for that. Because you and I and everyone else and everything else we know besides God are created. We've had a beginning. We haven't always just been here. We came from somewhere. Now, we might be here with God through eternity future, but we haven't been here from eternity past. It is not in our nature to exist. We only exist because we are connected to the power source of our Creator. As Acts chapter 17, verse 28 says, "For it is only in Him that we live and move and have our being." Without Him, we could have no being, for it is not in our nature to exist. Thus, the heart of Satan's desire to be God is really this. He, a created being, wants to be an uncreated being. He's created, but he wants to live and act and be treated as if he is uncreated. He's a creature, but he wants to be the creator. That's impossible. Not because God says so, but because Satan's own nature forbids it. There is no way for a created being to become uncreated. If you've been created, you can never somehow go back and become uncreated. It's impossible. That's the reality of our existence as creatures. And that's just the way it is. Makes me think of one of the funniest signs I ever saw. And I regret not buying it when I saw it, because it could be hanging in my kitchen right now. I mean, my girls have never been terribly picky eaters, but they definitely have their favorites, and they lobby for them on a regular basis. So when I saw this sign, I laughed right out loud, and I almost bought it. At the top, it said, tonight's dinner menu. Underneath were two choices. Number 1, take it. Number 2, leave it. Okay, maybe a little too dramatic for supper time, but it really captures the essence of the situation we face when it comes to our created nature. If we don't like being created, that's sort of too bad. This is the reality of how things are. We can either take it or leave it. So then the question becomes, what are the consequences of acting contrary to one's own inherent nature? Paul answers that later in this chapter. The consequences are destruction. For if a creature only exists because he is connected to the power source of the Creator, and if that creature is determined to separate himself from that power source so he can somehow become a creator in his own right, then he will effectively cut off the very limb he is standing on. By severing his connection to the only source of life in the universe, the result will be death. There can be no other outcome when a created being separates himself from his Creator. The fact that we are created means that by nature we do not have life within us. Right? We haven't been here forever. We're not little fountains of everlasting life. By nature, we do not have life within us. We have to be connected to the power source to live and move and have our being. Thus, if we are determined to disassociate ourselves with that power source, even to the point of trying to kill him, because we want to set ourselves up as God, we just pull our own plug in the process. This is the lawlessness described by Paul in 2 Thessalonians 2. It's the rebellion and pride of a creature who's sick and tired of being a creature. Evil and sin are defined here, not as using your power to hurt someone else, but as using your power to hurt yourself by choosing to act against your own nature, by refusing to love the truth, by refusing to accept the reality that God is God and we are not, that He is to be worshipped and we are not, that His rightful place is on the throne and ours is not. And don't think that this attitude is unique to the man of lawlessness. Because even though this man will have a real physical part to play in Earth's history, each of us also has the freedom to walk down this same road and make these same choices. Satan has decided that he's going to do everything in his power to tear God off his throne. But what about you? The Bible says your body is God's temple. And if your body is God's temple, then your heart was created to be a throne where He reigns supreme. Are you going to allow God to sit on the throne of your heart? Or are you going to remove Him as the object of worship in your life and put something else in His place? Are you going to accept His thoughts, His ideas, and His ways? Or are you going to exalt your thoughts, your ideas, and your ways? Are you going to worship Him? Or will you demand that He worship you? You have a place in God's beautiful creation. And God wants you to know your place. And He wants you to stay in your place. Not because He's interested in lording His place over anyone, or because He feels threatened by a challenge to His authority, but because when we try to step outside of our place, it leads to destruction. We are the created and God is the creator. It is only in Him that we live and move and have our being. That's the reality of life for us. That's the dinner menu of existence in this universe. And we can either take it or leave it.